Morning, everyone.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Yeah, my name is Thompson.
Sorry.
That's all right. My name's, I have a wife, 3 daughters. My wife Diane is currently probably still fast asleep. And she's also 4 months pregnant, so that's her version of multitasking. And I mean, it's a humbling. I have 3 daughters. My eldest is nearly 14, got an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. As you said, one on the way. I want to thank you for the invitation to speak here today. It is a really humbling experience. I know some of the speakers that have been here before, with Tony Anthony and we've got Paul Sabritsky, so I don't know if I'm quite in their league, but I will attempt to entertain you and give you a little bit of information as much as possible. My middle daughter really wanted to be here today, and I said, well, it's a men's breakfast, and when that excuse didn't wash, I said, well, you need $5 to get in. She thought, really? She said, oh wow, she's thrilled that people would pay $5 to hear her father speak, but she said, I get it for free. I have to address this. It's Movember, so this is my about 10-day-old moustache. It's supposed to be the Merv Hughes. It was either the Merv Hughes or the Mark Beale, but when I looked at that piece of God's handiwork, there was no way I was going to try and imitate that. So, that's Merv. This morning's really a little bit about me telling some of my story. How I came to be standing before you today. I probably won't be standing too much longer. It was a big breakfast. But where I've come from, it's not because I'm a theologian in the Bible college sense of the word, but I am a theologian in terms of just a studier of God. I like to stare on His face and get to know Him. I also enjoy studying a bit of biblical history. I was speaking recently to an archaeologist who also has a degree in forensic pathology. He was talking about a skeleton that they recently dug up in the sands of the Middle East. And he said, you know, Lance, within 2 minutes I deduced that not only had this poor wretch lived 3,000 years ago, but he had also died of a massive heart attack. I said, really? How did you tell that out of just the bones? He says, well, we unpeeled from his bony little fingers a little script of paper, and on it was 10,000 shekels on Goliath. Today I want to talk a little bit about a man and his freedom, and where you find freedom from. Amway, you know, the company with the circles, they would define freedom as doing what you want, when you want, with who you want. The dictionary says, the condition of being free of restraints. About 10 years ago, I used to run a company that was involved with venture capital. We're a very successful company. I was a pretty young guy, managing some men who were twice my age. We had 30 employees, and I had an office overlooking the harbour, huge, an office really about the length of this entire auditorium. It was very flashy, very ostentatious. To get in to see me, you had to have an appointment, whether you were my general manager or any of my staff or a customer. The only people who were allowed to come in and see me without an appointment were my kids. And they could come in any time they want. They could burst in through the door, and they would regularly, they'd charge in through the door. I could be on a conference call to the other side of the world, and it would get put on hold. And they'd jump up on my lap, and we'd laugh and play, and they had that right of access. See, that's freedom. They had that because they knew their identity in comparison to me. They knew who they were. See, Christianity, to me, equals freedom. Worldliness equals bondage. Isn't it interesting how the world has taken those two statements and distorted them and twisted them around the other way? That they would suggest that living by Jesus is being in bondage, and doing what you want, when you want, with who you want, is freedom. I've got a friend who's currently in drug rehab, and he was arrested and sent to prison for 6 years for essentially a massive crime conspiracy importing drugs from Canada. And Dave he was a DJ, he played in huge music festivals and had girls at his disposal, had music and fans adoring him and buying his CDs, and he did, at that time, what he wanted when he wanted. He thought he was in total freedom, but in all reality he was in a dark, dark hole, bound with an iron rope of drugs. I have a friend who used to be the president of a number of mongrel mob chapters, and as a president in those kind of environments, you lived by, he would call it the law of the dog, and he had men who were prepared to die for him. He had a different woman every day. He had drugs, he lived a world of violence, about $30,000 a week in drug money that he was pulling in. He did whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, to whoever he wanted. And yet he was living in a dark hole, bound with an iron rope of gangs. I have a friend who lived a life of pride and money. He used to wear $3,000 suits and $400 shoes and $800 shirts, fly business class all over the place. And he didn't commit any crimes initially, but as his pride took hold of his life, he started to get into fraud. And it was just a matter of time before those cops knocked at his door. And just like those tacky American TV scripts, that friend is me. And I remember the day the police knocked at our door. My wife was in the shower getting ready for work. I was getting the 7 o'clock coffee ready. As I said this morning, I'm not responsible for anything I say before I have a coffee. And so 7 o'clock coffee was brewing. And there was a knock at the door. We never really used to get knocks at the door at that kind of time. I was wondering whether it was sleep-deprived Mormons who were coming back for another bashing. But I opened the door to 5 cop cars, about 20 police officers, detectives, and the Toyota ad ran through my head. It was a pretty scary time. 4 hours of police officers turning over the house, going through everything. They go through your wedding album, they go through your underwear drawer, everything. And I sat in the lounge that day and talking with my wife, seeing our world fall apart, and we lost everything. A year later, I was sentenced to 3 years and 3 months in prison. Mount Eden. Some of you, I know, have been into Mount Eden prison before, hopefully as visitors, not as a resident. The Rock is what we know it as. It was built in the 1850s, Victorian England, and it is still exactly the same as it was then. There is no hot water in the cells, 2 men to a cell. There is no hot water. There is no underfloor heating. There is no plasma TVs. There's no KFC, there's no fish and chips, there's no bacon and eggs, and Mad Butcher breakfast sausages for breakfast. It's one of the most brutal places you're ever likely to go. And I'd come from a business background, a law school background, and I walked into this place to see men walking up and down in a prison yard with all hope gone from their eyes. There is no gym. The exercise you get is 6 hours a day, walking up and down, 21 steps, around about the length of a tennis court, touching a wall, turning 21 steps back. I said to a friend of mine, gosh, you could do this blindfold. You could do it with your eyes closed. Probably having your eyes closed walking up and down a prison yard isn't the safest thing to do. there was some really interesting things. I started to see it's like a whole little microcosm of society compressed and put into confinement. The guys have to release their energy somehow. So it's either in fighting, and when you get two 6'6" huge guys smashing at each other, surrounded by concrete, there's a bit of mess. Saw a guy get his ear bitten off. Saw another guy have his jaw busted with an iron bar. I was in my fair share of fights. They thought I was as white looking as I could get. I'm not totally, well, I'm actually mostly Maori actually, but it was beside the point. It was just releasing that energy that they had to get out. They have a game called Crash. Crash is essentially like rugby league, but there's no rules. You tackle however you want to tackle. The ball is a rolled up sweatshirt generally. You tackle however you want to tackle. Put the guy on the ground. It's concrete. You've just got to get it out. Got to get out the pain. Started to hear story after story after story. In my time in prison, I talked with hundreds of men. And the things that some of them have been through when they were little kids would make your heart bleed. One young guy only had one eye. Why do you have one eye, Timmy? My father breathed it out with a cigarette when I was 6 months old. A little bit about accessing true freedom. Your level, I want to make a statement. Okay, I'll try and get this right. Your level of freedom in life is determined by your level of humility before God. That humility comes from knowing your identity. As I was talking about before with my girls. When I was in prison, I was prisoner number 604273110. That was my number. I will forever remember it. That was my identity. When I realised, and it stuck in my heart, that I was the son of Elohim, the creator of the universe, my perspective on life changed a bit. It had to. It has to. When you realise that the King of Kings and Lord of Lords came to earth, bled and died on the cross for you, that's got to humble you. But that's your identity, and that has got to free you. So whether you are in handcuffs behind razor wire or walking along a beach, until you grasp that humility, and then you can access that freedom. It doesn't matter whether you are behind razor wire or on a beach. You can be free. I was going through the lounge the other day and some unholy person had left the television on. And there was a program of, I guess they must have been 15-year-old girls in America. And they were, the documentary, it wasn't really a documentary, it was an infomercial kind of thing they followed these girls through to their 16th birthday. And it built up to their party. And these families, they were rich kids, but not even rich in how we would understand rich, they were rich. They were like, well honey, what do you want for your birthday? I want a Land Rover, Daddy! I want the biggest, flashiest Land Rover. And they would spend around $200,000 on the party, let alone then all the presents. And these girls their whole identity was tied up in what other people thought about the stuff that they had. It's sad enough when your identity is formed by what other people think about you. Who cares what other people think about you? But let alone, it's even sadder when it's about what other people think of your stuff. These girls were just bound in trying to find their identity in something, somebody. it wasn't really worth having an identity in at all. I sat in a prison cell one Sunday night. I've been in the Rock for a couple of months, and I sat in this room. There was a breathing space about that big of a window in the granite wall, and it was the middle of summer and it was quite hot. And I sat in there sweating. We hadn't been allowed showers that day, so we were in the same clothes. And you can imagine what the place smells like. It definitely smells like boy. I was sitting there, and a lady that morning had said to me, "You know, Lance," she was a prison volunteer, and she'd come in with one of the churches, and I'd gone to chapel that morning. She said, "You know, Lance, you really need to give your life to Jesus, and if you just do that, magic will happen." Now, I'd been going to church for 10 years. I'd been turning up Sunday, 10 to 12. "Yes, Pastor, what a lovely service. Gosh, isn't God good?" And then running with the devil for the rest of the week. And I don't think, maybe I am. I don't know if I'm the only one who ever did that. But I think, I've got a feeling that there might be some other guys out in the churches these days who live kind of like I was living. They might not have ended up find themselves in prison, but there are a lot of Christians in prison. So I'd been going to church. I'd heard this before. And I tried to give my heart to Jesus. I tried to give him all the parts to me, but I'd always say, "Yes, Lord, I give you my heart, except that bit. And that bit." It's never really quite there. And that night I said, "Lord, look, I have tried this. I've tried to give you my heart, but I don't have the strength." There's a third day. I'm a big third day freak. And there's a third day song that says, "You know, I don't have the strength to give it away to you. He's just got to take it." I said, "Lord, take my life and do with it what you want." 2 days later, I was on the bus to bring the Takawaka to Upper Hutt. And my wife and kids are up here, my family's up here, my support network's up here, and I'm sent 650 kilometres away. And I was like, "What is that all about?" You know, you dropped the ball. I was a very angry little bus rider on the way down to the prison bus. And I sat down there for a month going, we had prayer teams. We had prayer teams praying that I'd be moved straight back and transferred back to where I could have visitors. We were totally just, let's do it, do this. And after a month, we just weren't getting anywhere. And I ended up sitting down in a room with a guy by the name of Pat Lewis, who's a programs manager at the faith-based unit. And Pat said, "Hey Lance, we normally have a 6-month waiting list. Do you want to come to the faith unit this afternoon?" "Yeah, I'll give that a shot." And as I walked into this place, I realised that all our praying was all just going directly against what God wanted all the time. The faith-based unit is it's Unit 7, which is a good number for a faith-based unit. It's a prison fellowship initiative that's been running for just over 4 years now. It took 7 years of negotiating with corrections to allow them to open it. It's a unit of 60 men, mainstream unit. 60 men who essentially live church. They've decided that they're sick and tired of the prison rules and they want to live like a church and really try and change their lives. It is the most incredible place I've ever been. One day I'll get the chance to go back there in corrections. He's up on their approval side of things. But they don't like the idea of ex-inmates going back in so soon. There's only a handful of units like this in the world. There's a few in South America, there's a few in the States, one in Singapore, and us. There's 5 rules in prison. Number 1, never trust anybody. Anybody. You could have known this guy, you could have done a lag with him for 10 years, and he will take from you the minute he gets the chance. Never trust them. Number 2, never show emotion or display feelings. It's weakness. Number 3, mind your own business. We have a saying, do your own lag. Handle your lag. Don't talk to me about your problems. I don't want to know. I mind my own business. And 4, the prison officers, the screws, are your enemy. Number 5, never inform on anybody. It's called narking. You narc on anybody and your life is forfeit. I learned those rules. I learned them real fast. I learned them within a day. I learned them real well. I remember my lawyer saying to me, look, if you've got any problems, just ask the other inmates. Got any questions? Ask the other inmates. Don't ask the guards anything. And I was like, rubbish, Mike. I'm a human being. They're human beings. I will treat them with respect. They will treat me with respect. That's not quite true. There is definitely, I guess it's a battle of two tribes going on between guards and inmates. And it's one of the things that helps self-perpetuate those rules. Those rules are created by prisoners. They're the same all over the world. I could go to a prison in Benin in West Africa. I could go to a prison in San Pedro, Bolivia. Or I could go to the Rock. And it's the same rules. And they all apply everywhere. They're created by prisoners. They're enforced and sanctioned by prisoners. Prison Fellowship operates on the assumption that prison doesn't work. Chuck Colson, the founder of Prison Fellowship International, went to prison back for the Watergate issues, and Chuck realised the futility of prison. There is a place for prison, it is required, but gosh, it doesn't work. So we base all our assumptions that prison doesn't work, so we take those 5 rules and we tip them on their head, and we say that's how you're going to live if you come to the faith-based unit. So we teach the men in the unit to trust one another. To trust the guards. We teach them to love what it really means to love, not love as they see love when they walk in there. We teach them to demonstrate emotion. There are truckloads of tears when guys are given the opportunity to cry. We teach them how to show concern for their fellow man, to how to live in community. We teach them accountability. We teach them responsibility. We teach them how to affirm one another. And we don't just make up these values, we get them straight out of the Word of God. And we're really quite blatant when we do that. We're explicit. We tell that when the Minister of Corrections or the Prime Minister comes to our unit and says, what makes you guys so different? How come your results are different? We say, well, because God's involved. And it's like a little bit of tilt. But it's the only answer.
So it wouldn't come very often, would it?
Yeah, once is like enough. But we do get a lot of overseas dignitaries coming. And they come because we're still seen as a shining light example of how prison should be done. They very rarely take overseas visitors into the pound at Mount Eden. They very rarely take politicians in there. I was speaking with Damien O'Connor, who's now the former Minister of Corrections, a few weeks back, and I said, have you ever been in the pound? Have you ever been to the pound at the Rock? He said, no. I said, well, you keep guys down there. Why have you never been down there? There is excrement coating the walls. You wouldn't, besides not wanting to touch the walls, I spent a couple of days down there, not for being naughty, but we just run out of space. And I just stood there all day, just standing there like this. Not touching anything. They brought food down. He said, you're not eating down here. It's pure, it is truly medieval. And if people actually saw the conditions that they keep men in, you'd wonder what was going on in this country. Now sure, the answer could be put out there. These are guys that have broken the law, they've violated other people, they've violated other people's property. I just wonder what Jesus would say about it. So, down the faith unit, these guys, their days are filled, and my day was filled with learning what it is to be sanctified. It's just a fancy name for being more like Jesus. And the more they got to find that out, the more they realised their identities. That regardless whether they were a murderer, a rapist, a child molester, a fraudster, a bank robber, a drug dealer, that in a decision they can become a son of the Most High God. And then they get to start exploring their identity. And with that comes some humility. And with that comes their freedom. Something that they've never experienced before. And something that, despite the razor wire, they can still experience. And I still experienced. In there we have our own choir. 15 guys, 15 pretty big guys. And it's called, the group's called Singing with Conviction. We have our own worship band. We have electric guitars and drums and keyboards. At the start, when I first got there, they sounded like a mix between Led Zeppelin and the Parachute Band. But by the time I left, a couple of years later, they'd rival any worship team on the outside. My wife got to come in for one family day that we had, and she walked in and was just blown away by the power of men singing. It's just like this morning, just doing the national anthem. There's a certain thing about that kind of key. Same in prison. One of the greatest things about church in prison is how raw and real it has to be. There are no denominational disputes. There's no, well, I believe this, so I'm not going to worship with you because you believe that. You get down to pretty much the root of Christianity. Take the faith-based unit, there's 60 guys that all go to church. They're not all Christians, but they all go to church. If I was to decide, I'm a bit of a Pentecostal, and if I was to decide that I wanted to do a Penty service, and I said, I just want to fellowship with my Penties, there'd be about 3 of us there. There wouldn't be a lot of happy clappy going on. If I wanted to do a Baptist service, there'd be about 3 or 4 of us there, and it'd be a pretty quiet service. So you have to fellowship with Anglicans and Baptists, Pentecostals and Catholics, all in the same room. And so you don't get the chance to get into those denominational discussions because you've just got to realise that Jesus Christ is your source. That's quite exciting. And it took me going to prison to realise that. So, yeah, we do run that unit just like a church. We have elders, there's 4 inmates and a couple of the staff who sit on eldership, just like a church. We have values, we have expectations that we expect of the congregation. We have consequences, we've got ways that we deal with issues. I can remember one night, you can just sort of talk through the walls. And I heard my next door neighbour, he was a youth pastor from the Dominican Republic. Mateo was his name. And Mateo said, I was lying back, I was just in the unit, and I heard someone yell out, 41! And the whole unit cracked up laughing. What's that all about? Inside again, a couple of minutes later, somebody yelled, 29! And once again, all the laughter erupted. Man. I said to Mateo the next morning, what was that all about? You know, people yelling out numbers and then everyone laughs. He says, well, we're not a very rich unit and we don't have any books, but we've got one joke book. And it's sitting down in the library. And instead of actually saying the whole jokes, because the guys have read the book so many times now, they all know them off by heart, they just go, that's clever. You're a genius, young guy. So that day I thought, well look, I know that the way to a man's heart often is comes through making them laugh. So I'll go and learn those jokes and I'll get in on the action. So I went over that afternoon, I learned all the books. I found some which were good, because being a Christian, you only want clean jokes. So I learned them, and I was like, okay, page 64 and page 21. So that night, we're all hushed down. I yelled, 64! 64! Total silence. What's that? And I thought maybe it's, okay, 21! I thought I heard someone boo. I was like, oh, that's just wrong. The next morning I went straight round to Matteo's room. Matteo, what's going on? I did that, I called out the numbers. What's going on? He goes, oh bro, it's all the way you tell them. So our unit is a mainstream unit. We have murderers and rapists and child molesters and fraudsters and bank robbers, the scum of the earth. And you imagine taking 60 guys from any churches, sticking them in a room together 24/7, 7 days a week, 30-something days a month, depending which month they're talking about, 365 days a year, on and on and on. You're going to have some fist fights. I'm pretty sure you'll have Anglicans and Baptists smacking each other and the whole thing will be on. Let alone hardened Crims who, a lot of them you'd think they have some anger problems. But the results, I guess, when you add Jesus into the equation, the results speak for themselves. I'm not going to read this, but I just got to make sure I get my figures right. In a normal prison unit, there's an average of 3 assaults a week and 10 other incidents requiring paperwork. At any one time, between 15 and 20% of the prison population is currently considered IDU, which means you're an identified drug user, you've taken a urine test and you've come back positive. Nearly a fifth of the guys that are in there. Not just the ones unlucky enough to get caught. For the past, in the faith-based unit, for the past 26 months, we have not had a single inmate test positive for drugs. We monitor that ourselves. The Eldership team, they're responsible for making sure we lay down the law with the guys that you want to come to this unit, you want to have a chance of changing your life off the drugs. That's despite being tested more than the Maori Focus unit, the youth unit, the violence prevention unit, and 2 work units combined. They really want to catch somebody. 2004 to 2005, we did not have one violent incident in those 2 years. I think maybe some of those guys could run anger management classes for the Labour Party. Over the last year, we had 5 assaults. That's still pretty good. They all came from one guy who used to be the head of the Tongan Mafia. And lovely guy, totally on fire Christian, and if you weren't Christian enough, a crack in the head might do it. So we've moved them on to another units to evangelise there, and no one messes with them. After 2 years, I was finally given parole. I appeared before the parole board 4 times. So it seems I was more of a risk than Graham Burton was. And I just kept getting turned down. I had an immaculate prison record, but I just didn't quite fit when I'm sitting there talking to a parole board and saying, well, my life has changed due to Jesus Christ, it's really hard for them to kind of grasp. So September 6th last year, just gone past my 1-year anniversary, September 6th last year, Diane welcomed me home. The day the police came and went through our house, my wife stood before me and said, and that was only 8 months after we got married. She said, look, I promised 8 months ago that I would stay by you, I would stick with you forever, and I'm not going to change from that fact. And she did. And so we were reunited, and I've got to honour her for that. She's the most amazing woman. And she stuck through absolute hell. It was 3 months before she was able to find the money to go down to Wellington to visit me. for 1.5 hours. And she would bus down after work, she would catch a bus that would go all night down to Wellington, have a visit, get on the bus, and bus all the way back. And be back at work on Monday. She had her home broken into, we had our house totally cleaned out. I know the guy that did it. I know that he's doing some time in Barry. But she came home by herself to a house that had been burgled. And so yeah, I put her through absolute hell, and I owe her a heap. So she's really the superstar in my story. Let's think about prisoners for a minute. We want them to have self-worth, yeah? So we destroy their self-worth. We want them to be responsible. So we take away all their responsibilities. We want them to be a part of the community. So we isolate them from the community. We want them to be positive and constructive members of society. So we degrade them and make them useless. We want them to be non-violent. So we put them where violence is all around them. We want them to be kind, loving people. So we subject them to hatred and cruelty. We want them to quit being the tough guy. So we put them where the tough guy is the most respected of anybody. We want them to stop hanging around with losers. So we put all the losers in the nation under one roof. We want them to quit exploiting us. So we put them where they exploit each other. You wonder why, after 20 years in prison, they walk out and are a whole different creature to the one that walked in, but not in a good way. Other than the USA, we imprison per capita more of our population than any other developed country in the world. We are obsessed with sending people to prison. I speak to a lot of people from the Prison Fellowship Network around the world. We're in 114 countries, and they're saying, what is it about New Zealand? You guys have a privileged, blessed nation, and yet you'll still just throw people in prison and expect that to change them. It does teach them a lesson. Prison does teach you a lesson, but is it the sort of lesson we want people learning? Because I was there 2 years, and other than programs that I pursued myself, there was not a single rehabilitation program which they were prepared to offer me. They say you get free education. There's 1,100 inmates in Rumataka at the moment. There's about 17 who are getting taught to read. They say they want people to be able to work in a family. I sat down once with 27 guys. We'd combined our cell groups. As a whole other connotation in prison. We'd combined our cell groups. And we had 27 guys, and I said, look fellas, who here has a relationship with their father? I do. My relationship with my dad's pretty good. We don't talk. It's just, my dad's old school. We just don't talk about the prison thing. But of the 27 guys that were there, 2 of them said, yeah, I do. And he's a beep, 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 beep. The rest of them didn't even know their dads. What in prison teaches them how to be a man, other than the guy carrying the biggest knife in his back pocket? Look, I want to pay a bit of a tribute to the people, to the guys here. I know Don does, the guys that do prison work. It is frustrating, hard work. I honour you. The work that you did turned around my life and is turning around hundreds of guys' lives. Prison Fellowship's ministry, our calling is to simply equip the churches to do the work of their ministry, to do their calling. It's not Prison Fellowship's job to visit the prisoner. Jesus wasn't talking to Prison Fellowship or to Don's ministry or whoever. He was talking to the churches to do that. So our role is just to give you the tools to be able to do that work. Whether that's visiting in prison and doing a chapel service and Bible study, great, totally needed. Or whether that's, we have a lady who goes into the women's prison and cuts the women's hair and teaches them how to do their hair nicely and look nice and feel a little bit good about themselves. Or is it going in and teaching art, or teaching how to play the guitar, or just sitting with a guy and playing chess? You don't have to be a flash speaker, you don't have to be a preacher in order to be able to do that and visit a prisoner. In fact, the Greek for in Matthew 25, when Jesus talks about visit the prisoner, the Greek for visit is actually a practical term. It's not just I go in there and sit and just shoot the breeze. And it doesn't necessarily denote that I go and preach to them. Or getting involved with reintegration. That's a church's call to help the families of those that are in prison. That's Prison Fellowship's role, is to simply give you the tools to do that. And I want to, and I hope that is every month. You guys are doing it. And I honour you for that. See, prison ministry is about building relationships with men and women that society have wanted to string up, to simply execute. It's about sharing food with them, about sharing your lives with them, letting them tell you their story. And it's something I'm just so privileged to be a part of. Going from sitting in a law school thinking I was all that, to spending my days in prison. It's great fun. I wouldn't swap a friend. There's a song called By Third Day, called Tunnel, and there's the lines say, I won't pretend to know what you're thinking, or I can't pretend to know what you're going through. I won't deny the pain you're feeling, but I'm going to try and give a little hope to you. That's all really the church is called to do. It's not there to go, yeah, I totally understand what you're going through, because the guys in there go, yeah, no, you don't. I can remember one guy at Mount Eden, bless him, I could see his heart, but he'd come in and goes, oh, you know, fellas, I'm a lot like you, when I was 15 I used to smoke a little bit of weed too. And there's guys there sitting there, one guy who chopped his mother to bits with an axe, and he's going, mate, yeah, a little bit of weed, probably not on the same level. Just be normal, But that's it. It's about just trying to give a little bit of hope. I've tried to do a few things this morning. Tried to talk a little bit about my story, tried to talk a bit about Prison Fellowship, tried to talk a little bit about where I think freedom comes from. But I guess if you are going to take one thing out of today, that freedom is what you make it, as long as it's kind of stemmed from the creator of the universe. So whether you're sitting in a prison cell behind razor wire, or walking along PR Beach, or actually as a friend of mine, I can remember in prison, Roger said to me, he says, oh look, I can't wait to get out and walk along Leamington Quay. Oh, Lambton Quay. But, your freedom in life is all about where your identity in God lies. Really, So I do want to close with one last third day song. I will write a whole message on one day. That I guess defines my life now. Where am I now? The song Show Me Your Glory. And I won't sing it because that would just be wrong. When I climb down the mountain and get back to my life, I won't settle for ordinary things. Prison, even though it was deep in a hole, was like a mountain experience for me. I won't settle now for ordinary things, but I'm going to follow him forever, for all my days. And I won't rest till I see him again. So my freedom now is found in Jesus Christ. My encouragement, my passion is for if there's guys in here who don't know that Jesus Christ is your source of love, your source of identity, your source of freedom. That you cry out to Jesus, in the words of Manukau on the third day. You wouldn't believe it. Because in Him, there's grace and forgiveness, mercy and healing. He'll meet you wherever you are. Thank you for the day. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for the fantastic breakfast. And if there is anybody here who doesn't have that connection with Jesus, who hasn't found that sense of freedom, come and talk to me afterwards. I'd love to have a chat. Thank you. Sure.